Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to Orgasmica, the podcast where we talk all about sensuality, sexuality, and all things healing. And today I am so honored, so honored that have Brianna in the house. And I don't even know how to describe you because you do so many just like such an amazing human woman. Rebel, fighter, all of the things. And I met you at the Mother Tree, and you were writing a circle, a women's circle. Um, and it was just all women, witchy in black, and we were just having like the most amazing time. And then I got so hooked into anything that you speak, like any oracles that you shared. You had a podcast, and I like absorbed that like like in a day. And I just like your energy and the way you speak truth to what matters, and the community that you have created, and everything that you do is so very impressive, so inspiring. And I just wanted to share that with the community. A lot of this community is Latino community, the majority of them. Sé que también hablas español un poco.
Claro que sí.
And so a lot of the community is bilingual. And we can throw some Spanish things in the
I
mix.
love that.
But I just want them to know you and to know your message and what you're saying. Having deep conversations with you is just like amazing, and like it's turning for the lack of a better word.
It's the best word. Yeah, no, that's totally it, right?
Yeah, and so I just want to share that turn on with every single person. How would you describe what you do?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on here. And me encanta el estilo de Clarissa Pinkola Estes, doctora Estes, como habla inglés y español, and she just weaves it in and out, you know what I mean? And like, it was one of the first times that I had read like literatura que literalmente podría ser una fuente entre dos mundos. O sea, every language is its own world, and I too have a world in Spanish and in English, and there's a way in which learning and speaking in multiple languages really helps us weave the worlds. And I would say that's been my life's work, my life's play, my life's orgasm, is like weaving worlds. I'm interested in different worlds. I'm interested in different human lives. I'm interested in different animals and plants and continents and planetary systems and ways of being and ways of thinking and ways of seeing the world, different religions and different philosophies and different ways of seeing economics and medical systems, from Ayurveda to Chinese medicine to Amazonian plant medicine to what is the depths of Lao Tzu's philosophy versus Joseph Smith of the Mormon theological line. So like my relationship with Spanish and English, I live in multiple worlds, in various realities, and I'm a student of life. I'm a student of human life, earth life, planetary life, plants, animals, the microbiome. And I teach from that place of being a student of these things, in the listening, in the constant learning, and then sharing those learnings as they become more and more embodied in my own experience. And I find myself wildly passionate about the sacred life and the practices and rituals that get us closer to that one life that lives us all, the orgasm that lives us all, the God goddess within us all, within everything, the oneness. And I also find myself deeply moved and wildly impassioned about the systems in our current reality that separate us from continually having the oneness experience, from continually being able to tap into our creativity, our flow. Our true birthright is to be in that royal place of creativity. And yes, there are internal healings and trauma, family generational trauma, that we can heal in order to step into those gifts. There's also global planetary structures that show up in our interpersonal relationships, in our communities, in our governments, in our militaries, in our systems of economy, the way we hold racism, the way we hold sexism, the way we hold classism, in ourselves and in the world, that prevent us from truly being, or the orgasmic beings that we are, the true oneness that we are. And so I'm interested in both what reconnects us to that and what prevents that connection personally and collectively. So I study that, and I'm learning how to teach on that, and I write poetry about that, I sing about that, I dance about that, I live and breathe that revolution, that turning of the wheel, that deeper consciousness that I feel is being asked of us in this lifetime. It's like, how do we face head on the troubles of the day while also holding deep knowing in our body of our birthright, of our divinity.
Yes, and that's why I love what you teach so much and how you show up in the world so much, because very few people are connecting the two, right? They're like, yes, this is your right, and like, yeah, let's get in touch with our sensuality and our sexuality, and yes, like, this are the tools, and like, these
Yeah.
are the sacred things, so like, deep into that, without tackling what is happening in the collective, in the system that we all live in, that we're constantly pushing against in order for us to be able to live in that space. But
Yes.
without seeing our space in the collective and what is being affected, we cannot fully heal, because we will always be pushing against like a status quo, a system of
Yeah.
repression. And so it is when we're only looking at on which one of your phrases that I love is new cage instead of new
Yeah.
cage. And I love it. You say the new cage, because it became that, right? It started as a very noble, let's bring the sacred, let's bring all this ancient wisdom into the collective in a more medium stream type of way. And then the system itself kind of like created a cage around that as well, to where it became just so self-serving, and just manifestation became all about making millions and just not paying attention to what the collective is. And
Yeah.
when I asked you, what did you want to talk about? And I love this, which was dissolving empire as a tool of healing, centering the sacred as a tool of healing. And those people are not talking about those two. And like, I feel like that is one of your missions, like literally goosebumps when I talk about that, and on the
Yeah.
stage that you talk to. Tell us, how can we bring those two things? And I understand for a lot of people, looking at the collective and the systems, it's too overwhelming. And so they shut down, and they rather just push that away and just focusing on their own, I'm going to make millions and on my business, and like focusing on that without understanding how much it affects all of it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's layers here. So I guess I'll start at the beginning, which is both science and the most sacred, which is we're all one. We're all one being. And you reach a certain amount of making money, or you reach a certain amount of meditation. You reach a certain amount of seeing the infinite fractal of the infinite God eyes behind the infinite sun so many times. You see the infinite light and sound so many times that there is a remembrance. There is a remembrance. The purpose of our spiritual practices, even I believe the purpose of acquiring money in a certain way, is to realize that all of that is for giving back. That abundance, it is abundance. We are meant to cultivate abundance in money, in our spiritual centeredness, in our ability to love and share and be in the heart and be what we truly are. We are meant to cultivate that, but we're not meant to only circulate it in certain areas. We're meant to spread it everywhere, everywhere. And the way that we help spread it is by naming empire, the racism, the sexism, the classism, the militarism that has been baked into the way that we relate to each other interpersonally. My dad, the way that he tried to control me wasn't personal to me or him. It is family inherited. It is also part of a larger system of patriarchy rooted in a Judeo-Christian religion that gives men the power to speak to women in a way where I could not also speak to him. There's no founding of equality in that philosophy. Therefore, I am going to challenge it because I've seen the all one. I know that my father and I are equal. I have so much to learn from him. There's a way to honor my ancestors and my elders also baked into this process. So it's not about me superseding his role in my life, but it's about coming to that place in my life. Oh, the systemic shows up in our personal trauma. It's not separate from our personal healing. It is our personal healing. And avoiding the connection to the system continually makes it a selfish process. That it's me manifesting for me and for my... No, it's everyone, everywhere, all the time. And when I cut myself off from the everything, everywhere, all the time, when I cut myself off from all beings or one being, wildly unique, I could never know your experience fully. Yes, we're completely individuated and we are all one, proven by science and the sacred again and again and again. In every spirituality, in every indigenous line, it boils down to that all beings are one being. And the way I live my life and the way I speak and the way that I move affects everything, everywhere, all the time. I'm always co-creating with the universe. I am not creating it. I am always co-creating with it. Therefore, for me to not look at the creation of what is, it's trying to get somewhere in my GPS by only putting in the desired location and not getting in true rapport with our current location. We need the exact GPS points of where we're at, the way the system has infiltrated, the way that there is a split. You know, I feel like one of the reasons, and I'm always learning, I'm not perfect, but one of the reasons why I felt so connected, I studied socioeconomics in Latin America as my undergraduate. I've spent more than half of my adult life in Latin America, from Patagonia to the Sonoran Desert. And so much of my academic draw to Latin America was because I grew up, my dad was a farmer. And in the fields, I'd be picking strawberries from the time I could walk. And I'm there with my friend like Erica Ramirez and her family, who would come up, you know, twice a year. And they would come and they would live on my grandma's land in a trailer. And her mom would make us fajitas for lunch. And we would be there speaking in Spanish. And I'd be picking. I had no idea of the dynamic that was imprinting into my heart. It wasn't a concept of equality or it was a friendship that was based in a relationship. And then I remember in our late teens, there was a conversation around like migration, the migration ice coming around. And I didn't understand what was happening. And there was like a fear running through my friends and their families, like this fear of like, who's coming? And my dad was driving other people to the other town because they were supposed to be coming through. It was this whole thing. And I'd never understood that and understanding that as capitalism, understanding that as racism, understanding that as this classism of these are indigenous people. Like her background is indigenous to this land. For 10,000 years before white settlers came to California, the indigenous people known as Mexicans or the indigenous Mexican, specifically the Mexica and then the north area, they were migrating up into this area for 10,000 years. And here we are in a field on land that my father, a settler, owns, that these people are coming to work on. And my little 13-year-old brain is like, what? What? And I didn't put all the pieces together, but in reflection and seeing that in my life and spending time in Latin America, sitting with the great plant teachers, Mama Ayahuasca, thank you, Yahe, and the teachers and the dynamics that I got to learn there, the personal relationships, while also seeing how especially racism and capitalism and sexism shit has infiltrated even indigenous areas. And the machismo of Latin America as an overall, and then the layers of racism and classism. It's not that it's different. It's there too. And I say that with not pointing a finger of bad, but just like a recognition that across cultures, we have these things that show up as domestic violence. Like domestic violence is a result of patriarchy, is a result of religiosity and beautiful faiths being taken and saying that the men are allowed to behave in a certain way and the women are not. And I see this as a pattern. And I like to say it's not personal, it's a pattern. It's not actually, I mean, not to take away responsibility. It wasn't my father who was abusing me. It was the pattern through him that wanted to vampire and live on, and me passing that on to someone else in whatever form of empire, racism, classism, sexism, militarism. If I pass that on, what I inherited from my father, that's my participation in empire as much as anything else. And so I see the personal healing journey as an essential part of questioning the systems, and also being able to connect to these systems. You're not alone in your trauma. Like, this has been imprinted into us as a collective. And there's shadow work to do. Yeah.
Right. So it's also like I have extreme compassion for my grandmother and my dad, and this moment seeing a lot of my dad's generation in Mexico, my dad having these. I grew up in a very Catholic religious background, and a very stereotypically like machismo type of things, or like, you know, the men is the provider and like the women cannot make money and they should be taking like the kids. And I would always fight with my parents when I was a teenager because like, this doesn't make sense to me. This doesn't make sense. But now I'm seeing also, and even though I fought him so much as a teenager, I was like, oh my God, it's you, right? Now I'm seeing that men his generation, when they're not working as much as they did, or work has changed for them in a certain way, he doesn't have a self-worth attached to anything except that. And that is one of the most heartbreaking things that I had to witness my dad go through, because I understood that this was the system doing it to him, and it was not necessarily his fault. And now he's trying to undo that, but now he's in his 60s, right? And so it's like trying to undo all of that stuff. It's like, oh my God, it's like so heartbreaking, because even though I can tell him whatever, right? It's like, no, Dad, your worth is not there. Like, look at all these places where you're like a human and a man and a father and like a grandfather and all these things that you give to the community. And he then came to a point where his worth was just gone. He's like, it didn't matter what I said, because if he was not making a certain type of money, if he was not the provider, then he was nothing. And it was one of the most heartbreaking things that and it's hard to then overlook at the whole system, because then I get fucking angry. I get so fucking angry.
Yes, rightfully so.
Yes.
Rightfully so.
Yes. But then I turn around and I'm like, who do I fucking blame for this? Like, where's the fucking finger? Who do I have to beat the shit out of? You know? Like, that finger thing. And then when you don't find like a person or a thing specifically, or what I'm finding, it's so big that I cannot tackle it. I get heartbroken, and then I get hopeless. So what can we do to dismantle, to tear down, you know, this thing when we feel so small and so hopeless to the institution?
Yeah. Yes, it's time for a revival. That's what it is. It's a remembrance that we have our ancestors. When people disconnect from the earth, when we have vampires in our system, what they are not connected to is Mother Earth and their ancestors. And there are those of us who've been practicing to get out of our trauma, to get out of our reactionary emotional body, to be present in our body in the moment, to be able to respond. We are being asked to step forward, call upon our ancestors, show up with each other, podcast with each other, join the mystery school if you want more training, show up in person with you. Like, literally, we are the power. We are the power. The billionaires, they are less than 1% of the people on the planet, but they are consuming 80% of the goods, and they are driving Mother Earth into a place that will be uninhabitable for humans. She'll be fine. She will recycle us. She will be fine. What the billionaires are doing on our planet right now, they are sick. They are vampires. We need to help wake up the 99.999% of the human species by remembering who we are and calling upon our ancestors, connecting with each other, connecting with Mother Earth, centering the sacred. We have hope. No, we are the hope. We know love wins. sense. We're all going to die anyway. I'm going to die playing my drum and connecting with badass, revolutionary women, men, soul siblings around the world who say, we're done with colonization. We're done with war. We're done with genocide. We want to pray. We want to play. We want to prosper. We want to repair. We want to apologize to all the indigenous across the planet for the bullshit that settlers have brought around and utilizing something beautiful like Christianity and turning it into a war terrorist rape tool that has completely sodomized our planet into oblivion, so much so that people feel disempowered and disconnected. That's not our human birthright. That's not who we fucking are. That's not who we are. I know who I am. I have sat around that fire. I have cried those tears. I have reconnected with my ancestors and their family lineage. I've called upon the Yuha Vietnam of the land where I stand, of the ancestors and the spirits that are here, and connected with the actual descendants of the people who live on the reservation down the hill from me. I know who I am. It doesn't mean I believe I'm better than anyone else or that I'm doing it the right way. I fuck up all the time. But I am here as an ambassador of Mother Earth, being like, we're not going to fuck with her like this. I am going to die. And I'm going to do it in a way where I am living for life every day that I can. Humbly, mistakes all around, not perfect. I'm not here to lead you. I'm here to remind all of us that everyone needs to be a leader right now. Do your meditations, do your prayers, say your mantras, show up for puja, do whatever the fuck you need to do to be in your power, because what's coming, we ain't seen nothing yet. We're going to be called upon. We are being called upon to find our centers. When I say free Palestine, it's from that place of we can't have genocidal maniacs like the United States funding genocidal maniacs like the state of Israel anymore. And because I'm a U.S. citizen, I directly critique the government that's supposed to represent me. That's bullshit from a spiritual place. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. And I say it from that place. It is an anger, it is a rage that has turned into coals in my belly because I allowed it to get worked in rage and grief ritual, being held by my community, being held by women and men and my soul siblings who are like, we've got you, go there, die, scream. You've seen dead babies on your phone every day for 411 days. Like, how can we hold you as you hold this? That allows me to hold, that allows me to show up, that allows me to play my drum, that allows me to speak in this way. But I fall apart too. This isn't a journey of, oh, I've got it figured out. This is how we lead. This is how we send. No, this is going to be ripping us all apart as we wake up to the reality that has been the United States of America and the way we've consumed natural resources on our planet and the way we've enslaved millions of children around the planet so that we can wear clothes from China and get our cell phone batteries from Congo and supply ourselves with drugs from the Sudan and Colombia. We need to look at our fucking selves. If we really want a revolution, if we really want to get back in touch with true luxury, true wealth, so much. And it's exciting. That's where the hope comes from. We've seen the infinite fractal. We know who we are. We call each other forward in that. Every human being has that within themselves, no matter how much shit they've done, no matter how much trauma they have, no matter how much trauma they've caused. We are one life. And we have to learn how to speak to that. I'm learning how to speak to that because I've been angry and I've pushed people and I've done my own dance with domination and really like, okay, I got to check myself with this anger and my activism.
Yeah.
And it's like what I really am passionate about is that I know every human heart is good.
Right.
I know that. I know that in my bones, in my soul, in my ancestor's soul. I know every human heart is good. People are responding out of trauma that is connected to these systems of oppression that we must stop now if we want to survive as a human species.
I mean, anger is necessary too in order to like
Vital.
Fuck up, like otherwise it's like lukewarm. And it's the other side. I mean, and behind anger, it's pain, like that's a lot of what is going on. But you mentioned something that I really want to talk about because I love creating, but also being a part of, like you said, like none of us that have a podcast or lead whatever, we're not, I also believe, like I call myself a guide, not a teacher, because I'm like guiding people back into themselves, into their body. But how important it is community, right? Like I grew up in a country, as you know, that you you grew up in there as well, how important community it is part of. You know, my whole family, it has its good things and its bad thing, aka like my family doesn't have any boundaries. Like that means like everybody also lives within a block from one another. But there is a space of, and then in the US, for a while, it took me a long time to get used to the individualism of it all, of where I cannot, and I had to find community, right? It's like finding the community instead of just having community. Now you have to go and find the community, which is
Yeah.
all, but how and what of importance it is finding spaces like you mentioned, like the mystery school, that they can allow you to feel all the things, because sometimes the community that you are around, your work people, your school people, or whatever it is that you're around, sometimes you don't feel safe to rage, to
Right.
do, to express, to feel all the feelings, and so then people just bottle all their feelings,
Yeah.
and they're walking around even with more trauma because they don't feel how to, they don't have a space where to like let it go. So how important it is to you, and you feel like to these dismantling of the system, to find our spaces that we can rage and cry and do and be held.
Yeah, I love this question. I find there's two ways to build community. One is whatever's around you, doing your best to connect with what's already there, and the other is to have a clear, felt vision for life, for the world, for yourself, and start to speak it. Start to name it. Like you creating this podcast and your work, like what you're really doing is being a magnet for a vision, for a way of being that people get attracted to. And then you cultivate ethos, right? Ethics and agreements based on this shared vision. So this idea of community has to evolve in the United States because we've been so individuated in the way that vision has been brought out as like, I'm going to build a business and I'm going to be the CEO and visionary, and I'm going to delegate all these tasks for everyone working for my vision. Whereas a community vision is like, maybe I plant the seed, but then someone else comes and adds something else, and someone else, it's almost like a drum circle. Like you don't really know who's leading the drum circle. There's usually a few who are like going to hold a consistent beat, but as the drum circle pans on, that leadership can change for anyone who's been in any form of like earthy or indigenous based drum circles, that there is this shared leadership often. And I like to think of building community more like that. Building a business is different than building a community. And you can build a community around a business. You can build businesses within communities. But I think what's being touted a lot in the coaching world as community is actually a business. And what it does is it creates this toxic mimic of intimacy. What we're hungry for is intimacy. We don't need more connection. We need deeper connection. And that's truly what community is. It's like, okay, you showed up for my course. That's great. I now have to bury a family member. Are you going to show up for me then? Right? There's a relationality outside of transaction. Like our relationship can include transaction, money, energy, time, but for it to actually be a relationship, there has to be a connection outside of that transaction. And so much of this like sister, brother, like family language and connection that's happening a lot of times in the coaching spaces or the self-development spaces is really based on transaction, and the relationship is limited. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just that when I myself spent a lot of time in that space and depended on transactionary relationships, that when I was going through something really dark, there was a disappearance of my community. And that's where I started to explore like what New Cage spirituality is and the cult of New Cage spirituality. The cult of New Cage spirituality is based in capitalism.
Yeah.
Is based in that we can commodify these sacred tools and practices without the deeper relationships. In traditional spirituality, indigenous spirituality, there was exchange all the time. They were trading chickens, they were trading gold, they were trading cacao. It's not that they didn't pay for spirituality. It's that the relationship with the medicine person and those participating was very deep, often intergenerational. And when that's left out, and this is my own learning, I've left it out in ways that I've taught, in ways that I've held space, because I didn't see this as the structure of capitalism. When that's left out and the main thing that's bringing people in is capital, and that deeper relationality is left out, it's exhausting for myself. It was exhausting.
Of course.
And I was like,
Like you said, it's just not true intimacy, right? And so there is this space, like the online space, right, where Instagram basically and all social media is like showing yourself as your highlight self, and that's pretty much about it. And so then when you show up to spaces and people are asking you questions, right, like how do I do this, like, you know, or help me with this, or how do I there's this feeling of like, oh, I have to have my shit together in order for me to like do this, right, or not be human. Like we dehumanize a lot of the healers, and this is like, because oh no, they're supposed to have it all together, they're supposed to be like the most spiritual things and never do wrong and never do and the moment that they do something, people are like, cancel them, get out of everybody. And I'm just like, oh my God, like they're human beings. Yeah, everybody fucking does that, right? But they're doing it on a bigger scale. But then people like that prevents from people to actually share their truth. And so we have all this like space to connect like in a social media way, and nobody really truly connects because nobody really wants to speak up about how they're doing, how they're feeling, how they're really, what's happening in their life, because they're so scared of getting canceled, right? And like that is a culture of like, we all have to pretend that we are perfect in order for us to like make money, in order for you to be attracted to what I am speaking of. And it becomes very isolating, and then it's like a fall to grace, because like you're like, I can't sustain that, right? Nobody can.
No, nobody can. Nobody can. And that's okay. I think it's set up to make people fall and fail. It's set up to make, people at the top very vulnerable, so that they culturally behave. It's cultural programming. And the enticement of fame and money is huge. Like any of us who were not seen by our family are going to have a see me wound. Like the more that people see me, the more likes that I get, the more followers that I get, the more subscribers that I get, that means anything about the quality of what I'm delivering. that means anything about the quality of who I am as a human being. The quality of what I deliver is about integrity with what I feel, what I'm connected to, my ancestors, my community, and delivering message or my gifts in a way that also is in alignment with all my relations. And that isn't going to attract as many people as me hiring a social media expert, branding, colorist. You know what I mean? Like there's a social programming that happens within the spiritual space that I would love to see more influencers challenge. Beauty standards, white supremacy standards, classist standards. Yeah. Like why does it need to look like a certain level of rich? Like what does that mean? Like what are we propagating? What are we promoting? What are we actually promoting? And I feel like the more reach someone has, the more energetic responsibility they have to represent, especially for those who've drank plant medicine, especially for those who've seen the infinite light and sound. We have a deep responsibility to show up in that knowing that all beings are one being, and not to perpetuate systems of harm specifically around classism, sexism, racism, and militarism. And that perfectionistic, all beige, perfect yoga pose facade can look beautifully aesthetic on one level, but it's also perpetuating harm.
Right.
When we show our shadow, when we show our wholeness, when our devotion to truth and accuracy becomes more than being liked by other people. And I'm in that transition constantly. It's a titration. It's a flubber between the two of feeling what that actually means in my body and being on the edge of that, and sometimes retreating and people pleasing. It's a dance. I'm not saying this from a place of I hath arrived, let me expound upon you how to do. No, not at all. It's fucking humbling to confront how much in me wants to be seen as beautiful or smart or worthy to be paid or whatever, worthy to be fucked, worthy to be whatever. All these like definitions of worry based on other people's perceptions. That's empire in me.
Yeah.
It's deep. It's deep.
Yeah, it's a deep shadow, I think, wound of one of us, you know, and like when we see it, oh, so we feel less alone. Because I'm just like, we all have it, right? And we all are battling with it constantly, whether it's like the size of our body or whatever it is that we have to constantly get faced up with, uh, you know, trying to be in my body, trying to be as sovereign as possible within to being a woman, and yet being bombarded all the time of like, oh, but you have to look like this, and you have to do that, and I have that, and you have to speak like this, and you have to like, you know, show up in the space like this. There's like, oh, okay, no, but this is not who I am. You know, I constantly am the social media game. It's like so much of it. But you have to post this, and I'm like, I don't fucking feel like it. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not going to. And it's like, and you have to do it like this. You have to teach a course like that. I'm like, I don't want to. I don't want to do it like that. And
that's your own personal revolution. And not to interrupt you, but just to like really, I want to just stand with you in this, hermana, of like your pace, your authentic pace, at the pace of love, at the pace of life as it moves you. That is a huge ass revolution from white supremacy, racist, capitalist, patriarchal, militaristic culture to say no to their timeline, whoever there is. It's a system, it's programming. It's not personal, right? I'm not gonna be like this coach or that person. It's like it's in all of us. And to some extent, it does work. You will make money if you do it this way because it's playing into the programming of other people. I thought as coaches, I thought as tantrikas, I thought as deeply spiritual people, our deepest work was to break the programming and truly liberate human beings. That's what I'm interested in.
me too.
I don't want to teach people how to make millions of dollars. I want to teach people how to wake up.
Yes, I want to teach people how to be in their bodies and say no, and like able to just like be the sovereign of your own life, and a constant fight. Yes, to fight the system, but at the same time, it's like no, yes, of course, like yeah, I have a business, right? But at the same time, it's like to what extent am I willing to sacrifice myself? You know, in a way that is not good for my soul or the humanity in general. I do want to talk about something that you talk so beautifully about. And actually, it's one of the first conversations that I've heard you speak of. And it was so deeply affected. I got so deeply affected in the way you speak about. And now recently, I heard you speak about it in a different way, and that is about witches. And I love the way, because one of the things that you beautifully have is that you have the intuition knowledge, but you also have the book knowledge, because you do study a lot and you know a lot of the things, and you're not getting stats out of your ass. Like there's things that you know, and how you linked the intuitiveness of like the earth and what we know, and the things of like the past and what we know in history, and how we've been taught history in such a fucked up type of way, because again, it's still part of the system. I want you to talk about what are witches, what were witches back, and what are witches now, the witches that are calling themselves witches, right? What is the job at this moment of the witch, and how it came to happen?
Yeah, love this. I'll just start at the end, which is like, I'm calling in all the witches. I want to work with all the witches. So we'll start there. I like the acronym WISE, Intuitive, Teacher, Counselor, Healer, which is historically, that word came about in the mid 1200s in Europe, right around the time that the Hammer of the Witches was also written. We're talking the height of different types of inquisitions because of the rise of the Catholic Church throughout what was formerly known as the Roman Empire. Women have been persecuted and prosecuted by any sort of patriarchal-based empire for as long as they've been around because of the militarization of the empire. They need to bring men and fighters to the edges of their borders in order to conquer other lands. And the ones who oppose that often are the mothers and the wives and the daughters of those who are going to be left behind. And so for when we trace back like the first accusations of witches, they weren't even necessarily medicine women or midwives or sacred centering, although they were also deeply persecuted, prosecuted around the world, these were women who were just saying no to empire.
Mm-hmm.
These were women who said, we were fine in our villages. We had our farming, we had our, our lives. And you come in and telling us that you want us to move to like a central city and like defend a fort. No. Like, why? That's not our consciousness, right? So we really saw a clash of consciousness at the rise of what we call civilization. And there's this lie that we as human beings only lived a certain amount. For almost 150,000 years, some form of humanoid has been on the planet. 300,000 years, actually. 150,000 years is when you could recognize them as more human. 300,000 years humans have been around. We have mummies as old as 100, 130 years old. We as human beings were doing fine in villages. So this idea that civilization saved us or made it better in some way is the first lie we have to challenge. And the witches were the women who were still connected to the old ways of humanity. And I'm not saying it's perfect. There were many rises and falls of extinctions and challenges along the way. And I'm not anti-technology. I just want us to remember to our roots, like our original human roots, that we have been doing this for a lot longer than civilization lies would have us believe. And we have an intuitive wisdom connected with the earth where we can not only survive but thrive in symbiotic relationship with the planet. We do not need to be at war with the elements in order to thrive on this planet as human beings. We have to redistribute the amount of resources and who owns them and who gets money from them. But that's a larger conversation. So, which has kind of started from that. It's the history of mostly women standing up against military empire. The witch trials, which is what is more known as the connection to the witches, began around 900 AD, got really hot in the mid-1200s, all the way through early 18th, 19th century, still high amount. Up until the mid-1900s even, there were laws around the world. And to this day, there are even some that if a person is accused of witchcraft, it's punishable by death. So it hasn't died out as much as we think it has. But the term witch was really focusing on women, oftentimes women who were unmarried, owned land, and participated in any sort of herbs. They like grew herbs. Midwives were definitely targeted. Any sort of shamans were definitely targeted. The Bandrui, the female druids of the Celtic lineage, definitely targeted. So there were targeted waves, but overall, there's an estimated 3 to 6 million women who were murdered between 900 AD and the early 1900s, being accused of being a witch. There were also men who were murdered in the name of being a witch, and also lots of non-binary. They specifically targeted like queer, non-binary, and even other than able-bodied people, people with disabilities, were targeted by the Catholic Church. And the rise of the witch trials really happened after the Black Plague siege ran across Europe. Like more than 50%, almost 75% of the people were like either plagued or died. Like it was a horrible plague. And when you have a combination of a horrible health scare and the rise of a strange inner cabal of a religion like the Christian Catholic Church in Europe, it kind of made for this perfect storm. And so that's when the witch trials got really strong, was after the Black Plague. And they continued throughout, Victorian Europe. But because of the expansion of colonization between 1200 and 1400 specifically AD, and you saw the European colonizers start to go around the world, this philosophy of witchcraft and specifically murdering, torturing, raping, pillaging women to destroy the center of the village, to destroy the center of community, pit everyone against the women and especially against each other as women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was that's one of the main things to me that I was like, right, is like this still very much alive still right now. Like, being in competition with one another, being like against each other when we're like, no, we have a shared experience, even though we're very individual, we also have a shared experience of this body and looking at ourselves in a certain way and feeling maybe unsafe and whatever. And this this separation of us, and back in the day when we were doing women's circles and things like that, and like the separation of like, no, like my life has to be perfect and we're competing for a man or for a job or for a thing, this competition that separated us. Like it also started back then, right? Because there were a lot of women that will also pointing at like, oh, she's a witch and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fear that was baked into us because before that time, most indigenous cultures around the world, like there was some cases of monogamy, but most cultures around the world were female focused, where we as women had sex with whomever we want, had children with whomever we want, did whatever we wanted. Pretty much across the board for almost 300,000 years, the Homo sapiens lineage was female focused, was female centric. Wow. Protect the women, protect the children, and let them do what they want, and we'll be fine. Yeah. And we were. It was when patriarchy was established and the ownership of marriage and the idea that there had to be through the male line. Why would we do it through the male line? We can't prove that shit. Even till now, it's still like, you know, we can prove it through the female line. Why doesn't everything go through the female line? Because there was a break with civilization. And I don't know if it was aliens. I don't know if it was greed that came from within. I don't know what started patriarchy. I don't know if there was like a couple thousand years where the women got out of control and the men wanted to take over. I don't know what happened. Right. But something happened. Mm-hmm. There was a great fissure that humans decided they needed to take more than they actually needed. Mm. The Lakota call it wetiko. I've heard it called soul loss. But this idea that I'm going to fill up inside of me something outside of me by having an extra castle or an extra wife or as belongings, right? Like before civilization, we didn't see people, places, things as belongings. We saw ourselves as one interconnected web.
So yeah, there was a breakage in the system, but there was a breakage that probably started within inside. Of like something happened and ourselves that then we started searching outside of ourselves to feel whatever it is that we were missing from within. And hungry
ghosts, like ravaging, right? Like war is from a place of ravaging.
Yeah. Yes, oh my God. And what is all the witches that you're calling forward? Come on, witches, coming out.
Yeah. The ones who feel deeply connected to the earth, deeply connected to their life force energy, deeply connected to the orgasm, who've been singing their songs and casting their spells and praying their prayers and consulting their cards and the stars and their ancestors, the ones who've been in practice, who want to utilize this lifetime for all beings, who want to use their gifts for the all one, who want to use their gifts to dismantle empire within ourselves and within this world, and to center the sacred from a place of revolutionary, tender joy. Tender joy, right? Like the fight is sensual.
Yes, and that takes me to,
you know,
one of my last questions, which is, what do you think is the role of sacred sexuality in this space right now?
It's the biggest threat to empire, is our aliveness. That rage you feel in your body is your orgasm as much as an actual orgasm. When we turn the lights on to our feeling body, not just our emotional body, the stories and the patterns, but our feeling body, the sensations from the inside out, we're unfuckwithable. We are mothers. We have fangs. Like, we are the mama bear and the mama wolf. We are Kali and Morgaine and Hecate. We are her, which rages. When you try to come take my children out of the crib, I will bite your fucking face off, and then I will love you back into remembrance of who you are. And I will ride you, Shiva. Like, I will ride you, Tiger. I will ride you, Sir, Patriarchy. Like, when I say fuck the patriarchy, I'm like, how do we just like submit it through the power that we have? Whether you're in a woman's body or a man's body or a non-binary body, your connection to that Shakti life force is your greatest weapon. It's the greatest tool. It's the greatest medicine. It's the only thing they can't take away from us. It's the only thing they cannot control unless we let them. No one can control that. They might rape us. They might take our money. They might take our children. They might take our land. But that life which lives me is mine, and it's what I am, have always been, and always will be. And I ride that eternal life force energy. That is who I am. that is the reminder of why we're here. Every human being should have the right to be safe and liberated to access that in this lifetime, because it's fucking phenomenal to live from this place. It is amazing. And there's too much cutting off too many people from that, and that's not okay with me.
Yeah, amen to that. A fucking man.
Yeah.
Yes, like coming back, which is what it is, sovereign, right? It is like, oh my God, I so in my body, so in my pressure that yes, it is like the constant going back and forth, but it's a practice, like everything is, like coming back to the earth, like coming back to our bodies. It's a practice because we've been not taught how to do this, right? So it's a continued practice, which is something that I love being in spaces, and in a space, it's an experience. But how do you right? It's like taking the experience and then making it a practice, so then you can then be within your body, be in that writing like deliciousness, and then you can become sovereign of your own self, and then you can liberate you and then the rest of everybody by fucking the shit out of everything in life. And so fuck yes to that. My last question that I asked you about, no wonder they call her Reverend, right? Like we call her Reverend. She just preached. She just preached. Question that I
Yes.
ask everybody is, what is an orgasmic life to you?
Radical authenticity, like in my body, not having to talk on eggshells, not having to walk on eggshells. Like, as much as it is like sensuality and sexuality, it's like me being able to be an absolute goofy nutball and like wake up with like whatever happening, and be, for me, nature is orgasmic. Like, I live in the forest. To be real and authentic and not, I think about what I'm going to say, but like, I don't have to think about it. Like, I can just like, just like be all of it. Timelessness. I like having chunks of my time where I have nothing scheduled, and I can literally let the day just guide me.
Oh yeah, that is orgasmic.
It's the ultimate liberation. I feel for myself. I won't speak for anyone else, but just that I can do whatever I want with an entire day, multiple days a week. Like, that to me is wealth. That to me is wealth. Privilege, wealth. Ooh. Orgasmic. Just when I look at my schedule and there's nothing planned for the day, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
possibility.
I remember when I met you, you were like, I just want to lay naked in the woods with the animals. And that's what you're doing, which I love.
Yeah.
You do live in the woods. You are with your
Doing it.
You are absolutely doing it. And that also, and you're speaking to so much power. And you are definitely one of my teachers that I was able to witness that both things can be at the same time, because you do have a community, you have a school that I want you to talk a little bit about, and you do have a business. And yet you are a person who takes her time and that is naked in the woods. And I did not think that was possible at all, one bit, because I didn't grow up with anybody around me, especially women. I grew up with a lot of burnout women. And the let's go, the cortisol levels up to the sky, which ended up fucking my whole body. That level of need and addiction to that hormone. And then I saw you and I met you among other people, and I was like, oh my God, is this a possibility? Holy shit. Like, I never thought that was a possibility. And so I always like think about you when I'm like, no, it is possible. So talk a little bit about, what is the Liberation Mystery School?
Yeah. Liberation Mystery School is an online and in-person space. We meet up a few times a year. I teach every week. There's multiple other calls led by our other members. We call them oracles. And it's a place where we are imperfectly practicing liberation from the sacred to the sensual, in social justice and in silliness. Those are our core practices. And we meet every week. Every month we have a theme, and then every week we have a core practice. And I teach every week, and then we also dive into our community time, where other people will bring forward their reflections, their shares, their wins, their celebrations, their challenges, and to have this space where we're working in a deeper way what liberation actually is and could mean for us. We also just had our first white presenting anti-racist call today, which I was so grateful to be a participant in, led by some other oracles in the space. And to have 15, there were only women in this call, but come on this call who are like, yeah, we want to stand as anti-racist in a spiritual space, that's an essential part of liberation. And it was brought forward by our creative oracle, Shelley Bruce, who's an incredible artist and participant. She's also has been working with me in the space. She's also a Black woman, and said, hey, for me to feel safe in this space, I need the white people directly doing anti-racist work. And not that there's been anything huge, but little microaggressions, and especially because I am white presenting Brianna, because we're led by a white woman, it attracts more white women in the space. And what can we do to bring more liberation? And similar, the question was posed to us too, because there's men in the space. What could we do to feel even safer as women with men in the space? And then posing that to our non-binary and trans people in the space. What could we all do on the collective who present as our birth-given gender to do to make you feel more safe? So we're practicing liberation. It's a school where it's emergent. We're practicing. There's just over 200 of us in there. It's been going for about a year and 10, almost 11 months now. And it's beautiful. And I learned so much. I'm a student in the space. I do offer, I practice teaching. I'm learning how to teach liberation. And there's other calls. We have a Reiki call and an embodiment call, a mindful journaling call. There's also a BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color call on Zoom. And then a couple times a year we have 4-day-long ritual gatherings. Our next one is in Valencia, Spain, March 20th through 23rd. It's at this beautiful retreat center, 15 people. So if anyone's interested in that, you're more than welcome to come, where I'll be teaching, and there will be other facilitators on dissolving empire, connecting our personal trauma to the larger systems, and then also centering the sacred rituals and practices. Everything from movement work to altar work to invoking different emotions and even archetypes and deities, almost like a ritual theater of sorts. So yeah, it's beautiful work. And that's the Mystery School. It's $33 a month. We also do scholarships because it's a great way to be able to exchange. But if money is an issue, it's not an issue. And yeah, would love to have anyone reach out. And I'll give you the link for 2 free weeks. So if anyone wants to try it out, or if you want to try it out, just come try it out for a few weeks, hop on some calls, test it out, feel into it.
And I'll put the show notes too. So if anybody is interested, they can just click in there for that. And thank you so much for talking to me and for preaching amazingness to the community. And I hope that this reaches to as many people as possible, because what you're doing, it is so important, and I'm always learning from everything, how you show up on Instagram and how you do things, and I'm always of that. And so it's an honor to have you here, since I've met you I think I met you in 2020, so it's been it's been 4 years, and so it's been amazing to just follow you in this journey and being around ceremony with you as well. I was in a couple of circles with you, and it's always a beautiful, amazing, very somatic, intense, beautiful, deep experience. And so if anybody is in LA as well, or if anybody's in Valencia, if you get a chance to just work with Brianna in person, that's also like pretty thank you so much, and thank you, everybody. If this resonates with you, please share it. If you're like, my person has to, like, this person needs to hear it, share it with that person. That is the way that we keep growing, just by you sharing into it. And I really just appreciate all the beautifulness that it's here. So thank you so much, Bri. And I'll see you next week with the episode in Spanish. Every week it's one in Spanish, one in English. Next week it's Spanish. So I'll see you in the Spanish version of it. Bye, everybody.
Bye.